Hello everybody, my name's Craig Carey-Clinch and I'm here to talk to you today about the National Motorcyclists Council. My thanks to RSGB for giving me this slot quite soon after the launch of the NMC, which took place back on the 5th of March. Now, what I'm going to do today is to talk a bit about why the NMC has come into being and to give some dimensions on how this will reflect on road safety policy and initiatives going forward, plus also give some idea of our aims and objectives moving forward. So moving on to slide, why the NMC? One thing we've noticed over the years is that the motorcycle lobby has been its most effective when it combines to present clear and unified key messages. Some of you may remember the government's motorcycle strategy of 2005. That was partly or predominantly due to the formation of the original National Motorcyclists Council, which brought together a range of motorcycling organisations in the 1990s to call for a government strategy. That was published in 2005, and I think put in place some good routes for further work. The organisations themselves, though, I think to an extent thought to themselves, well, we've won. There was much work still to do, but there was a very positive reaction from government at that time. But then we reverted predominantly to individual lobbying, and events overtook the whole thing. The 2008 financial crisis, change of government in 2010, and the priorities of that government, and how things changed after that. So the strategy fell away. There was no unified lobby at work as such, and indeed many organisations at that point were very focused on the effects on their organisation and also public policy that emerged from the financial crisis. Problem is, where are we now? So breakthrough with government on core transport policy items as they relate to motorcycling does remain elusive. The constituency, which you think about as being all the different motorcycling organisations, representative organisations that is, they all have similar policies and outlooks and ideas and lobbies when speaking to government, but not one voice where it really matters. So we see individual successes on some issues, but there's been no shift in the strategic narrative of government at all towards the recognition of motorcycling as a transport option, or indeed when it comes to safety policy, some of the more beneficial items that could come from motorcycling being supported within a transport policy framework. Safety, it does need a more holistic approach. There's incentivization lacking. The benefits of motorcycling, commuting, recreation, tourism and sport are unrecognised. And what tends to happen there is that safety initiatives do tend to be piecemeal rather than integrating with the wider narrative of motorcycling use. And it has to be said, well, why would the government support motorcycling when it's not part of its core policy for transport? And I would say, is this lack of recognition actually holding back progress on safety? Could it be that safer motorcycling will come from a framework where motorcycling is recognised as part of transport policy and initiatives put in place and the investment put in place to support motorcycling in that wider framework? I think this could provide an enormous multiplier effect to road safety in general. What we're looking at is a fresh approach. So if we're looking at what the NMC is, it's a coalition of motorcycling interests. It works together on motorcycling public policy issues, and it draws together all the key representative organisations that are involved in what you would call national representation on motorcycling matters. It provides a working place for these issues to be considered, where joint activity can be agreed and outputs agreed. That can range from an approach where common key messages are propagated across different organisations. We can look at enriching the debate through background research and collaboration with others to develop that research, or on those very significant issues, actually provide a single voice campaigning face to government, to Parliament and elsewhere to make sure that it's very, very clear what the motorcycle community and the motorcycle sector needs. All in all, though, it's about creating that strength in numbers. There are common grounds, lots of them actually, but supporting each other towards a common aim, a common end, would appear to be quite appropriate during this period of time. The aims and objectives of the Council will be overall to work together to assure a positive and sustainable future for motorcycling. But the goals within that, it's really about researching, informing, debating, looking to secure fair treatment for motorcycling and motorcyclists, providing that single voice that I mentioned earlier, and also to get the debate going and providing thought leadership. There's a range of issues out there that do impact on motorcycling. We see this from overall public policy activity that goes on, and leading that debate and encouraging conversations within that debate is going to be an important part of what the council will do going forward. But overall, it will act as a force multiplier by combining organisational strengths. And since the launch of the council, we've actually seen that in action. I've been very pleased with the level of contact and support that we've had since the launch of the council. Old contacts refreshed, new contacts made. Overall, the word coming in is that the conversation needs to be started, and we're very pleased about that. But in practice, we will create the means to lobby on issues of key concern. I've mentioned a few of these before: the creation of consensus positions, looking at research and policy papers, think tank style inputs and outputs, looking for providing materials, discussion points and agenda items for parliamentary activity, organising events, presentations and debates. A focal point, which is the most important thing, where groups can get together and decide these common approaches, and combining our strengths to create collective vigilance and information sharing. It seems at the moment the 7 key issues of common concern to all national organisations are focusing around motorcycling and transport policy, but underneath that you've got road safety policy and rider licensing issues. There's the whole matter and discussion of motorcycles in the context of the 3-pillar sustainability model. Then we've got the recreation side, protection of heritage, looking ahead to the future, future transport, decarbonisation, new technologies, the role of motorcycling and the voice of the motorcyclist within key developments that are going on in that world. Motorcycle access for both urban and rural areas. So it's about commuter transport for motorcycling, but in rural areas, how does that also work? You know, we've got an issue with rural bus transport. I know the government's been making some announcements on that this week, but walking, cycling and public transport does play an important role in the countryside, but it can't fill all the gaps that are there. And this is where motorcycling and motorcycles have a role to play. Regulation and enforcement, various issues that come from that from time to time, be it technical regulation or user regulation and enforcement of the laws. These are areas where motorcyclists have a voice, but that voice in certain areas needs to come together and be enhanced. But our first and overarching objective, what we'll be pinning a lot of work going forward in order to achieve this objective, is a new government motorcycle strategy. The 2005 strategy, as I mentioned earlier, was a key opportunity. It drew together governments and motorcycling organisations. It produced an output which had great promise. There is no reason why that shouldn't be repeated. And indeed, the gaps in public transport policy or transport policy generally mean that there is a real need for this. 7 of the 11 objectives within a motorcycle strategy do have a safety dimension. Overall, it's this idea that we can develop through supporting motorcycling in public policy, sustainable road safety policy, which then opens up a whole new series of benefits and opportunities for transport policy as a whole. So plugging the gaps that are left by walking, public transport and cycling with the motorcycling option. We who ride and those who do ride do know that this option is a viable one. There are 1.4 million regular motorcycle users. Over 60% of that use is for utility, practical and commuting transport. So already it is being utilised as transport. What we actually need is a government framework which recognises this and puts in place policies that both support and create sustainable long-term safety. So if you want to find out more about the NMC, there's information there. I'm very grateful to have had this opportunity to talk today, and as you can see from the range of organisations, ACU, BMF, IAM, MAG and TRF, it's a well-supported organisation. There's more information about the NMC and our various launch documents are in the download section of the website, which you can see on the screen here. And thank you very much for your time.